Connected. You've got a podcast.
Welcome to the Mystic Access Podcast, where the magic is in learning.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Mystic Access Podcast. I'm Chris.
I'm Kim.
And I'm Lisa.
And we have lots to talk about today. One very important thing that we have to talk about is the Mystic Access Podcast.
Don't worry, we're not going away.
Right, we're not going away, but we did make some changes to the podcast that affect certain desktop players in Windows, and that would be QCast. Recently, we switched podcasting hosts, and our new host serves the files using an SSL certificate. And QCast doesn't like that. So unfortunately, our workaround that we've been using for the past 2 years to get QCast and our podcast to function properly no longer works. So if you try and subscribe to the podcast through QCast, it will give you an error. If you try and download an episode from QCast using our old workaround, you will also get an error because, again, it just won't work. It's not compatible anymore.
So because of that, we have an alternative for you, and there are several alternatives that you can utilize. Chris and I have been playing around for the last couple of days, experimenting with some alternatives that are available for you, and Chris is going to show you one of those today. And this is a free podcatcher that works exclusively on Windows.
And it is called the Accessible Podcatcher.
Please note also that when we talk about podcasts being affected, in this case, there's nothing that you need to do differently if you were on iOS or Android or Fire, or if you're using a Victor Reader Stream or similar device to download your podcasts. You are also welcome to reach out to the developer of QCast. Thus far, we have not gotten results by doing this, but perhaps if enough people do, then it's something that he may fix in the future.
Yes, we do know that ours is definitely not the only podcast, or the only podcast certainly in this field, that no longer works in QCast. So that's just something to keep in mind if you're interested in having QCast support back. Unfortunately, due to our switch, there's absolutely nothing we can do on our end about it at this point in time.
And here is the insert for the Accessible Podcatcher. Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining me on this exploration of Accessible Podcatcher. Because we switched hosting providers at Mystic Access, QCast is no longer an option to listen to our podcast episodes. So we just wanted to take a few minutes and show you an accessible alternative to QCast. It is called Accessible Podcatcher, and you can find it by either Googling or searching for Accessible Podcatcher, or you can go directly to the page at www.webiee.org.uk/accessible podcatcher, all one word, AccessiblePodcatcher. And I'm going to start the Accessible Podcatcher.
Start window. Cortana window. Search box edit. Blank.
And I'm going to type
Podcatcher. Desktop app 1 of 7.
And I'm going to press enter.
Podcatcher. List. In touch. BBC Radio 4.
So I am in my list of podcasts that Accessible Podcatcher has pre-installed for me. So if I hit the down arrow key.
ACB Radio main menu. In our time. BBC Radio 4. LibriVox free audiobooks. Action for Blind People podcast. Tech Talk archives.
And I actually added that one myself. Let's go to the menu by pressing Alt.
File submenu Alt plus F.
And I'm going to right arrow.
Podcast submenu Alt plus C. Item submenu Alt plus T. Audio submenu Alt plus A. Video submenu Alt plus V. Options submenu Alt plus O. Help submenu Alt plus H. System submenu space. File submenu Alt plus F.
And I can down arrow to explore the file menu, and let's do that for a minute.
File menu. Save Control plus S unavailable S. Import I.
So you can import podcasts from an OPML file.
Export T.
You can export to an OPML file.
Exit text.
And you can exit. So I'm going to hit escape.
File submenu.
Now I'm going to go to the right.
Broadcast submenu Alt plus C.
And down arrow.
Broadcasts menu. Get new podcasts Control plus GG.
So I can get new podcasts, which is what I want to do. But let's go down and see what else we have.
Download broadcasts. Closes podcatcher. O. Add broadcast A. Delete broadcast D.
So if you wanted to add a podcast manually, you can do that. The other option will allow you to search the podcast directory. It doesn't search iTunes, but it does search a podcast directory that Accessible Podcatcher has set up.
Edit broadcast E. Sort broadcasts S. Search a web page for broadcasts W. Rename podcast F2R. Get new podcasts Control plus GG.
So I'm going to press enter.
Add new podcasts. List connecting to podcast directory. Please wait. List item.
So it is connected to their podcast directory, and I'm going to press tab.
Edit. Selected type here and press return to find a podcast.
So
Press F3 to find the next one.
I'm going to type Mystic Access
F-S-I-C Mystic S
and press enter. That should be enough.
Access list Mystic Access podcast where the magic is in learning.
And it is, so I'm going to press enter.
Accessible Podcatcher dialog added Mystic Access podcast where the magic is in learning to your broadcast list. OK button.
So I'm going to press enter on OK.
Add new podcasts. List Mythology keyword feed. Mythology keyword feed.
Now I'm going to down arrow.
My Video Schwooz Top 100 charts. My Video Schwooz Video des Tages. Nachspiel Deutschland.
So we're still in the directory of podcasts. If I tab again.
Edit. Selected Mystic Access.
There's the keywords that I typed.
Close button.
And I tab to close, and I'm going to press enter.
Podcatcher. List. Tech Talk Archives. Tech Talk Archives.
So now we're in our list of podcasts. Now if I down arrow.
Mystic Access Podcast. Where the magic is in learning.
If I want to see the podcast episodes within the Mystic Access podcast, if I were to just press tab, this is what would happen.
Frame 1 list. Select a podcast and press return to load its contents.
So I'm going to shift tab.
List. Mystic Access Podcast. Where the magic is in learning.
And I'm going to press enter.
Frame 1 list. Getting podcast. Please wait. The Kim and Peter Show were eager to jump right into the news and to tell you about a free class detailing all the Braille Note Touch Plus has to offer. Find all the details here and come join us. In order to bring you the most complete information possible, we're moving back the start dates for our...
So it is reading the show notes. It read the title of the podcast, which in this case is the Kim and Peter Show, and then it started to read the show notes to me. So if I didn't want that one, I could press the down arrow key.
Little Ballerina. The team starts out this podcast with news of iOS modules. Lessons 13-18 are now complete and can be purchased from our site. Our final set of 6 modules starts in April and can...
And I'm going to press down arrow again.
The Great Perchange. After welcoming you to the broadcast, we provide a demonstration of how to apply points to your order.
So if I go back up to the Kim and Peter Show.
The Kim and Peter Show.
And press enter.
Pause button.
And we are now playing the podcast. So it said pause. I'm going to hit the space bar.
Space. Pressed. Unavailable. Play button Alt plus L.
So our pause button now became a play button. So if I tab.
Forward button Alt plus W. Stop button. Frame 1 grouping. Unknown. Unknown. List. Mystic Access Podcast. Where the magic is in learning.
Those two tab stops that said unknown, the first one is volume and it's a slider, and the second one is position and it's a slider. So you can use your arrow keys to change the volume and go through the podcast should you wish.
Frame 1 list. The Kim and Peter Show were eager to jump right into the...
So it literally was streaming the podcast. It did not download the podcast. There is a way to download podcasts. Let's see how this works.
File submenu Alt plus F. Broadcast submenu Alt plus C. Get new download podcasts. Closes podcatcher. Oh.
So it's going to close the podcatcher when I press enter.
Accessible podcast downloader list. ACB radio main menu selected. LibriVox free audiobooks selected. Tech Talk Arc.
So what it did is it's selecting all of these shows or podcasts. So if I don't want those, if I want to unselect, I hit spacebar.
Space. Not selected. Mystic Access Podcast. Where the Magic is in Learning. Not selected. Not selected.
So it says Mystic Access Podcast not selected. So I want to select this one.
Space. Mystic Access Podcast. Tech Talk Archive selected.
I'll unselect this one.
Space. Tech Talk. Action for Blind People Podcast not. LibriVox free audiobooks selected. Space. Not selected. In Touch. BBC Radio 4. Not selected. Not selected. In Touch. BBC.
So I've got one podcast selected, one show selected. So if I hit the menu bar,
File submenu Alt plus F. Broadcast submenu Alt plus C. Download submenu Alt plus W. Folders submenu Alt plus L. Options submenu Alt plus O. Schedule download times T.
so you could schedule download times.
Download only one item from each broadcast ho. Maximum download size is M.
So if you want to download only one item from each podcast,
Download only one item from each broadcast ho.
you would select that item. So I'm going to press enter.
Accessible broadcast downloader list.
Let's go back into options.
Files, broadcast, download, folder, options, scheduled. Download only one item from each broadcast checked ho. Maximum download size is M. Skip deleted items S. Leave me to delete items off the hard disk L. Try to use broken feeds check T. Schedule download times T.
And there we have the options. So I'm going to hit escape.
Options submenu.
And I'm going to hit the left arrow key.
Folders submenu Alt plus L.
Let's hit the down arrow key.
Open download folder Control plus OO. Select new download folder S. Use default download folder check U. Open download folder Control plus OO.
So we'll hit escape.
Folders submenu Alt. Download submenu Alt plus W. Download now Control plus DD.
So I'm going to press enter. I could have just hit Control D to start the download, and it should only download the last episode from the Mystic Access podcast because that's what I had selected.
Accessible broadcast downloader. Cancel button. Unavailable. Download all button Alt plus D. List. In Touch. BBC.
Let's see if it worked. Let's do Control O.
Downloaded broadcasts window. Items view list. Mystic Access Podcast Where the Magic is in Learning not selected 1 of 1. Tree view. Level 2 data. F. Collapse 10 of 18.
So I'm going to press enter.
Mystic Access Podcast Where the Magic is in Learning. Items view list. The Kim and Peter Show. MP3 not selected 1 of 1.
And there it is, the Kim and Peter Show. That is downloaded. If I press enter on it, it is going to play this file in my default media player. So I'm going to press Alt F4.
Accessible broadcast downloader list. In Touch.
And I'm going to press Alt F4 to close the accessible podcast downloader. And let's go back into the accessible podcatcher for a minute.
Start window. Cortana window. Up. Podcatcher. Desktop app 1 of 7.
And I'm going to press enter.
Podcatcher list. In Touch. BBC Radio.
So I'm going to go back to the Mystic Access podcast. I'm going to hit the end key to get there.
Mystic Access Podcast. Where the Magic is in Learning.
And I'm going to press enter.
Frame 1 list. Getting podcast. Please wait. The Kim and Peter Show were eager to jump right.
So I'm going to hit the down arrow key.
Little ballerina. The team starts out this podcast.
So let's say that I wanted a little bit more control over my episode, but I didn't really want to download it. I still just wanted to stream it. If I go to
File sub broadcast item sub menu Alt plus T.
item,
Delete, hide, items D.
I could delete that item.
Show deleted, hidden, items S. Open item in Windows Media Player O.
If I press enter on here, it will open this podcast episode in Windows Media Player. So let me press enter on this.
Accessible Podcatcher dialog C. Program files. x86. Windows Media Player player.x/play https://www.mysticaccess.com/broadcast download/7311/littleballerina.mp3. OK button.
So I'm going to press enter.
Podcatcher. Suggestions view.
And it is now playing using Windows Media Player. And I'm going to confirm that by pressing Insert T.
Suggestions view. Podcatcher. Windows Media. Suggestions view. Suggestions view. Connected. You've got
And
a
there it
podcast.
is. Alt F4.
Podcatcher.
You could use Windows Media Player's increase speech to listen to your podcast a little faster. So this gives us an alternate way to listen to the Mystic Access podcast from a Windows PC. Thank you very much and enjoy continuing listening.
So the other thing we have to mention is we have an important date to remind you about. It's important for a couple of reasons. This date is April 15th, 2019. Well, for one thing, it might be important to those of you who are up really late doing your taxes on Saturday night, or Sunday night, or first thing Monday morning. You will need to have those done. The other reason that this date is important is that as of April 15th, we will no longer be offering support for Internet Explorer for the mysticaccess.com website.
Correct. What we're going to do is, because some people, they go to the website and the little banner that's on the page that says we no longer support Internet Explorer, what they do is they go and they check out and they get frustrated because the incompatibility with the checkout process and Internet Explorer. So we've decided to make the website, if you're using Internet Explorer, just tell you to download a different browser.
Now we know several of you still use Internet Explorer. We understand that. We had a free class last year about switching from Internet Explorer. We talk a lot in that class about comparing and contrasting browsers and how they work. And really, browsers have much more in common than not. And that's one of the things we talk about. So if you go to our free downloads page, you'll be able to find out more information about that class, find out how it works. The problem is that when you get your checkout process right now, if you're using IE, a lot of times you can't fill in the fields to enter your information to successfully check out with us.
Right,
and obviously,
the credit card fields are gone.
Yeah, that will never do.
Right.
That will never do. That is not a good thing. So if you want to continue to use IE, you can either call us, you can use our catalog, which is available in our menu when you call the main number. You can find out what's going on there. And it does need an update, so that's something that we need to get done as well to get their newest products up into the catalog. You can use a different browser. So certainly one of the browsers that's close in relationship to IE is Edge. Firefox also. Firefox has a menu bar, just like Internet Explorer. So that's something that you could use as well. And all these browsers are free. They're free alternatives to IE. You're going to find over time that fewer and fewer sites work well or work at all using IE. So the more time that goes by, the more sites that won't work utilizing IE as a browser. So it's just something that you're going to discover because IE is no longer being updated or supported. There are also security reasons that IE might not be your best bet at this point to utilize as a browser. So we aren't saying that you can no longer use IE. It is no longer something that you should do. We are saying that you may find more and more sites that don't work well utilizing it. And as of April 15th, our site will no longer work using IE. There's just too many facets and layers to our site that are beginning to break down using it, and we do not want to cause confusion or frustration for those of you trying to utilize it. So another browser is definitely an alternative for you, or you can give us a call and we will be happy to place orders for you via phone. Whatever works best for you is great with us.
I must admit that when I started trying to use other browsers, I ended up feeling kind of silly because I had used IE for years and years, and IE really started to be crashing regularly for me. Quite frankly, I got sick of hearing people say, you should use whatever, Firefox, or, well, now Chrome or Edge. But at that point, I was getting a lot of comments, you should use Firefox. And finally, those two things came together. I was tired of it crashing. I was tired of people saying I should use Firefox. And I tried it. And the reason that I felt silly was that while it was slightly different, it really wasn't very much different at all. And it was actually quite easy to transition. And now I can use either of the three browsers. I can use Google, I can use Firefox, or I can use Edge, and I can switch between them. And it's a good skill to have, because it helps you be flexible and not so afraid of the change. But also, some sites work better with some combinations. For example, one site I know of works best with JAWS and Edge. Another one works best with NVDA and Firefox. So it's just a matter of being flexible and finding those combinations, but it really isn't as scary as it might at first sound.
Absolutely. You also may find that with a different browser, your speed of being able to browse sites or move to sites will increase dramatically. That's what happened to me when I switched from IE to Firefox. I went, oh, wow, everything's so much faster.
Yeah, and Edge will tell you when the page is still loading, which is kind of nice. Firefox, when you're downloading, doesn't give you all those notifications. Go to the notification bar. Do you want to run or save or whatever? So there are little differences that can kind of make a big difference to the quality of your browsing. And if, of course, you would like one-on-one training to assist you in this transition, please contact us about that as well, because we do offer that service and would be happy to work with you.
And the next important thing about the 15th of April, as Kim was alluding to, is tax day. And Kim would like to tell us a little bit about taxes.
Well, no, she really wouldn't. But what I will tell you, however, is that over the last couple years, I have found a very accessible tax solution, and that is TurboTax. So for the last 2 years, I've used TurboTax.com to do my taxes. And it's been, as much as taxes go, a pleasant experience to utilize the site, not to do my taxes. So that has been very interesting. I really like being able to do my taxes independently. I have fairly simple taxes, so it's not like it's taking me weeks to gather all my stuff and figure out what's happening and what I need to do. So as a result of that, I found that it's quite easy to go in and utilize the forms that are available there. And they really don't even show up as forms. It's not like you're having to figure out which forms apply to you so much. You need to know what they're called, like you would need to know if you had a W-2 or a 1099 or what have you. But the way TurboTax works is it essentially holds your hand through the process and walks you through what you need to do in an order that makes some level of sense. Now, last year was crunch time for me, and I thought, I've got to get this done, and I just need to go ahead and do it. And I did not have a solution in mind for last year, and I was freaking out because it was like April 7th or 6th or something, and it was not good. So ultimately, I ended up trying TurboTax on a whim, hoping that it would be a useful and practical solution for me, and I was done with my taxes in about 3 hours. And that was great. I really like the friendly approach that the site takes. Occasionally you'll switch to a new page and it'll say, you're doing awesome, or keep going, you're doing great, or something like that. And you can continue to move through and enter your information. Now, obviously, you will need to have all the forms sent to you in some format that is accessible to you, or have had someone to read those to you or something, so that you'll obviously know the amounts of income or the amounts of interest or whatever it is that you happen to be putting into TurboTax at any given time. It also gives you an audit risk assessment, which is also very nice, and they'll tell you what to do to lower your risk of being audited. So that can be handy as well. The version of TurboTax that I utilize is not free, but it is immensely cheaper than I think either of my colleagues paid this year to get their taxes done. So that kind of is good in that you're not paying quite as much. It's not a cheap process to get your taxes done, whether you're utilizing software or you're going somewhere to have those done. But it is obviously something that we need to get done, and we need to do it in a way that is accessible to us. So if transportation is an issue for you, if you're someone who would just rather do it on your own time at 3 o'clock in the morning and have everything done, if you are someone who has fairly simple taxes and thinks, well, I've only got a few forms or a few items to enter, then maybe I can do this myself. I just want to let you know that it is a very accessible way to do it. Now, this year, I had some of last year's information brought in to supposedly save me time. I found that a little more complicated because at first I wasn't quite sure what I was doing and how I needed to edit that information to update it for this year. That was a little tricky because not everything is labeled. There's some unlabeled buttons and things that you kind of have to play with. That can be a little daunting, especially since after a while, just like with any site that you're logged into, it will time you out. So you'll be logged out and you'll have to log back in. So there are things about it that can be a little trickier, but if it's something that you want to try, and I know other people have talked about its accessibility in the past, I just wanted to let you know that it does definitely work. I used it under Firefox and NVDA this year, and everything worked. Everything was accepted, at least, so I should be good to go. I should not have to worry about it for a while now. So it is quite a relief to be able to do it, to know that you're entering your numbers correctly, and to be able to find out exactly what you're doing. And as I said, I do like the very friendly way that it moves you through doing your income, your expenses, your tax breaks, and other things that you need to do to get everything done right. And you can file both your federal and state taxes, although state taxes do cost you more. And once you have completed the filing process, you will be sent texts, notifications, or emails, depending on whether you do it through the app or through the website, that will tell you what's happening and what you need to do next, or will basically tell you when your taxes are accepted by the agency to whom you have sent them. So it's very handy and useful. And the iOS app also works. So it's very, very similar to the way the website works. It's a pretty similar thing. And as you're going through, you will be able to see at any stage of the game what you owe for both federal and state. So that's handy as well. I especially like putting in expenses, because if you put in expenses, you can see that total go down. So that's quite nice as well. So I just wanted to spend a moment talking about taxes, even though who really wants to talk about them? The other thing I will note is, and this is probably the case no matter where you would go on what website, but one thing you will need, as I discovered yesterday at the end of doing my taxes, which I had forgotten from last year, you will need a form of identification. So if you have a state ID or something along those lines that you utilize, you will need that information. You will need the date that you received it, and you will need the expiration date. So you'll need the issue date, the expiration date, and the number associated with a state ID. So that's something to remember as well, because you will need it. Fortunately, a quick call to IRA got me that information, and I was ready to complete. So that's like the last step. But it is very doable, and as much as possible, it does make the process relatively I won't say stress-free. That's not good. It will cut your stress level at least a bit in being able to do your taxes and know that things are accessible. So if you're one of those last-minute procrastinators like me, please know that that is possibly an option that you may want to look into.
May I ask just a few questions for clarification?
Please.
Okay. First of all, when you're talking about TurboTax, you're going to turbotax.com, I assume.
Correct.
Have you ever used the computer-based software?
No. When I went in last year and was able to do it, I chose, basically, it's like choose your product, and I chose self-employed at the time for last year.
Mm-hmm.
And then it essentially didn't make me download anything. That's what I thought it was going to do. It was going to make me download software.
Right.
And it ultimately just said, okay, we'll start here.
Okay,
boom,
here
boom,
we go.
Boom.
Yeah.
And essentially it tells you the plans when you first start. So you can do, like this year, the big thing is TurboTax Live. So you can actually have a live CPA on screen with you, kind of helping you out, and they'll essentially sign your taxes for you and say that everything's great and grand, and I'll go off to the IRS. So that's an option. Or you can do what I did, which is there's a lower level plan where you essentially put everything in and they guarantee you and all these things. So I chose to do that one, which is a similar one to what I used last year. But no, there's no actual software that you have to install. All you do is go to turbotax.com and you can begin the process directly from there. You will need a free Intuit account. That's very easy to sign up for. If you have a phone, then you can have a code sent to your phone if you want to sign in using the iOS app. Those are the only two I've tried so far, but there is an Android app too, as far as I know, and maybe a Fire app probably at this stage in the game.
And that was the other thing I just wanted to clarify, that when you tried it on iOS, you were using an app. You weren't going to Safari.
That's correct. I was using the TurboTax app, which is free and available through the App Store.
And you know what I like best about all of this?
What?
It's the fact that after this podcast comes out, by the time the next one comes out, we won't have to talk about or think about taxes for a nice long time.
Yes, it is a very wonderful thing. Yay!
Yes. But we do have another important date coming up, and this is a much happier date, and it comes up prior to the dreaded tax time.
It does. It's Kim's birthday, and what we've been doing every year is having a birthday sale. Now, Lisa unfortunately doesn't get a birthday sale.
Oh yes, I get the best
one.
birthday sale.
Yeah.
It's just not my birthday. We call it Black Friday.
Yes.
It's close enough to being right around her birthday, though, that it
Yes.
counts as a Lisa birthday sale.
Yes.
So on the date of April 11th, we will be having a birthday sale, and all discounts will be automatically applied on the website, so there will be no coupon codes or anything of that nature. However, stay tuned for the amounts, as we haven't decided what they are going to be thus far.
And that is a Thursday, so mark your calendars.
Yes, absolutely. So you will save on my birthday. Obviously, it's a one-day only sale. So if you have something in mind that you would really, really like to purchase, and it's a bigger purchase, then you may want to wait until my birthday to make it. So we are looking forward to sharing the sale with you. And it's going to be a while before our next birthday sale. We have to go all the way back to Lisa/Black Friday birthday sale before we get to another one. So if you want to take advantage, now is probably the time, because we probably will not have any more sales until convention season.
Well, we hope that you have enjoyed this episode, and we hope to see you again next time. Thank you, everybody. Bye.
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 The preceding podcast is a presentation of Mystic Access, where the magic is in learning. If you are blind or visually impaired and desire to discover how our comprehensive products and services may support and empower your assistive technology journey, we welcome your visit at www.mysticaccess.com. Have a question or wish to place an order via phone? Call us at 716-543-3323. If you have something to share about this podcast episode, press 4 to reach our Mystic Access podcast comment line. Email us at info@mysticaccess.com. Connect with us on Twitter at twitter.com/mysticaccess and like us on Facebook at facebook.com/mysticaccessempower. Would you like to spread the word about our podcasts? Your friends and colleagues may listen and subscribe at www.mysticaccesspodcast.com. Our latest 5 episodes are also available via phone by calling 701-801-8527. If you enjoy our episodes, consider leaving us an iTunes rating and review. Your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks for spreading the word, and thanks for being a listener. We hope you enjoyed this episode.